Hey, everybody. Oh, I just yanked my earring out. That's how excited I am, right? So give me just a second. I'm going to let you guys get in here. I have some things that I need to cover like right at the top of the hour for some other advocacy work that I have been doing. And so give me just a second. I need to share this to my personal page and I need to share it. Give me 1 second. I just got to make sure that I get everything shared appropriately so that everybody can see where they need to be seen. So what's up, John? How are you? So you're not in BFE right now? You can actually get a signal? I must be really excited because my tail has gotten hot. Like hot, excited, all kinds of things. And so I'm excited about this conversation. So give me 1 second and I'm going to copy this link. Actually, I'm going to do it this way. Yay, look at you guys. You're in here. Hey. All right. So got that done. We're all ready. And so yay. So hey Jamie, hey Teresa, hey Mookie, hey Phoenix. So Miss Daniel Croy. Okay, thank you very much. Got you. Hold on 1 second. Let me make sure that my guest did you see it? So I sent the link for them to join me. So I'm gonna give it a second for them to get in here. Do y'all care if I put my ball cap on? Can I put my cap? Are y'all going to judge me if I get up and leave? Don't y'all go nowhere. Hold on. Okay. I feel better now because listen, y'all know I've been sick for like 11 days with shingles and stuff and haven't done jack to my hair. Listen, it was not happening in the 30 minutes that I had to prepare. Hey, Toma, I'm so glad you said I'm here to learn. That makes me so happy. Because let me tell y'all, I have learned so much in the 7 hours that I researched for, maybe 7 or 8 hours that I researched for this broadcast tonight. And so we're going to dig right in. And what I'm going to do to thank you. And yes, and Miss Daniel is here to help us learn as well. So you can go ahead and let them know kind of what your pronouns are, how you like to be addressed, and that sort of thing. As you all know, I have another guest that is coming named Drew, and he is also he's a trans man and wants to be identified as him or him or he. And so we're going to dive right in. I'm really excited about this. So, okay, when people ask me, nah, my name is Phoenix, he, him. Gotcha. Oh, you were calling me Miss Daniel. I got it. Look, it took me a minute. I'm trying to read comments and get my life together, as you can tell. So Phoenix is he, him. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so the reason I'm very, very excited is people have asked me, like, why do I like to do these lives? And why do I want to do, online, like have the talk show and all of that? It is for this. It is for us to have conversations that are challenging, that push us outside of our comfort zones. Hey, Almighty, that make us challenge what we've always thought, what we've always believed, and move us in the right direction. Now, before I get going, let me say this. I need to do a little bit of housekeeping and recap. So listen, tomorrow night is the virtual community forum that is taking place for parents, students, and members of the community who would like to support those students who have experienced racial targeting, bullying, discipline disparities, and discrimination. That is tomorrow night. There is a Facebook event that is on the Rantings of Danny page. You can RSVP to that Facebook page, and the link to the Zoom is in there. And there's also a link for those of you whose children have been the victims of those things to complete a racial incident form so that we have it as well, okay? So it's really, really important. I don't want you all to think that just because I haven't broadcasted, any more kids that we're not still pushing that. We are very much pushing that and working with these families and with these kids, okay? So wanted to make sure I took care of that. Let me make sure I did get a message. Okay, great. All right. So, oh, wait, can I see you? Nope. Okay. So before we get started, I want to go ahead and give you all some terminology and some definitions so that we all have clarity about what we're talking about, right? Um, I do not mind if you post the location. I do not mind at all if you post the location, Phoenix. So check this out. So a lot of people, and even it's hard for me to keep up with all the different terminology. And for the purposes of this conversation, we are going to discuss Lia Thomas. We are going to discuss Castor Semenya. We are going to discuss both of those issues. We're going to be talking, and I am going to address the quote unquote biological advantages that people believe that trans women may have. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. And so what I want to do first and foremost is to provide you with some definitions that I think will help with clarity. Okay. So the first thing is, many of you may have heard or even said there are only two genders, right? How many of you guys have heard or said there are only two genders, male and female? That's a common, remark that I've seen across social media. And that statement is actually incorrect. Okay. So there is a difference between sex and gender. So let's be clear. Sex talks about your biological and anatomical physical characteristics that are typically used to assign a person's gender at birth. Okay. So, those things can be like chromosomes, hormones, internal and external genitalia, reproductive organs, right? There are a lot of different variations of sex, guys. It is not simply male or female. That is not accurate. And we're going to talk about that. Biological sex must be seen as a spectrum or a range of possibilities rather than a binary set of two options. Gender is actually your relationship between your physical traits and the way you identify, the way that you see yourself, whether that's male or female, both or neither, right? And there's behaviors that go along with that. So you have your gender identity and your gender expression. Those things are separate and different from sex. Now, to help you all kind of understand this and how our sex actually forms, I've got a quick 1-minute video courtesy of Shape Magazine. I do not own this video. It belongs to Shape Magazine, and I'm going to share it with you. Okay, so here we go. So how many of you all knew before this? How many of you all knew before that video that all of us anatomically start in the womb with a clitoris? How many of you all knew that? And that it's literally like a low level of testosterone that makes it form outside and turn into a penis. So it's important for people to understand the correlation. And Jamie said, me, I am not surprised that you knew that, right? I am not surprised, but I bet many people didn't know that, right? Now, I want to continue with these definitions because now here's where it gets really, really interesting, okay? So we have sex and gender appropriately defined for everyone, right? So now I'm going to add intersex. So people who are intersex, right? An estimated 0.05 to 1.7% of the population is born with an intersex condition or differences of sex development. People with intersex conditions, right, differences in sexual development, are born with mixed physical or atypical bodies with respect to sexual characteristics, chromosomes, internal reproductive organs, and genitalia. These characteristics may or may not be visible, and people may or may not be aware of the condition. Having an intersex condition does not necessarily affect your gender identity. So one of the things that I want to talk about that a lot of people have brought up is castor. So let me pull this up for just a second so that you guys have this. So how many of you all knew? And I'm really especially talking to my Black folk, because y'all know how y'all do. How many of you all that brought up castor? Gosh, why isn't this showing me what I want? Hold on, sorry guys, I'm trying to show you this. Maybe this is it. Let me see. All right. So how many of you all knew that castor actually is classified as intersex? That she is an intersex individual. Did you all know that? And that she has the XY chromosome and the ability to use the testosterone that is in her body. She has the ability to actually use what's circulating in her body. That is what gives her a competitive advantage. So follow me. You can be a XX woman, an XX female, and have higher levels of testosterone than usual. About 1% of the population has that. 1% of the female population has a higher than normal testosterone level. Okay. But if they have an XX chromosome, they don't have the ability to use that testosterone that's circulating in their body. The XY chromosome it's what enables you to use that testosterone that is circulating in your body. So in 2008, when castor hit the scene and she became this overnight sensation, blowing everybody out of the water, people wondered, hey, is she female? Like, is she biologically, anatomically female? Now, she classifies herself and considers herself and identifies as a female. John Goddard, you just said, I just blew your mind. Right. So these are all things that I learned today. So, and I want to make sure that I pull this up so that you guys can I can give you the other, I want to give you the links that I'm referencing so that you can figure this out for yourself at the same time. Okay. So let me see. Did I have, I do have it. Yay me. Holy crap. I'm so proud. Y'all should have seen me struggling to get this together for you. So I'm going to give you some of these other links. So when people say to me, when people bring up castor, she's not the example that you really want to use, because so let me just show you what I mean. I'm going to pull her. So let me just, thank you, Phoenix. So Phoenix says XX with high level of testosterone naturally excel at most sports and typically stronger than the normal female. Right. However, in her situation, she is an intersex athlete. She has an XY chromosome, and so that means the testosterone level is within the male range. And I want to talk to you about those ranges. And she has the ability to use that testosterone in competition. So she had an option, you guys. She had a choice whether she wanted to take testosterone suppression medication in order to get her levels within the competitive range for women. And I want to talk to you about what those ranges are. Okay. So 99% of women, of females, have, let me just tell you the terminology. Okay. They have a testosterone level that is less than 2 nanomoles per liter. You don't really have to know what a nanomole is. I don't know what it is, but what I do know is that 99% of all females have testosterone levels that are less than 2 nanomoles per liter. The male average is somewhere between 7.7 to 24.9. Okay. So the guidelines from the World Athletic Association, the guidelines say that in order to compete in a female sport, your nanomole levels of testosterone need to be less than 5 nanomoles per liter. You following me? Now, remember what I just said. 99% of all females, right? XX females, their nanomole levels are less than 2 nanomoles per liter. And so the NCAA says, listen, if you're a transgender or if you have DSD and you're an intersex athlete, and all you have to do is have your nanomoles less than 5. So what does that mean? It means, yeah, you could still have an advantage technically, right? Because most of the females are going to come in at 2 nanomoles per liter or less. So hers, though, are in the male range, which means her levels are naturally 7.7 and above. Okay, are y'all following me on this? So that is why it's higher than the average woman, right? So what they said to her was, you can compete, but you need to take testosterone suppression because you have differing sexual development than a normal XX female does if you want to compete, because you have an advantage because you can use the testosterone in your body, which XX females cannot. Okay? She said, no, I don't want to do that. Now, before you say, well, that's how she was biologically made. Okay, listen, we have always had situations where athletes change their normal biological physical makeup, right? In order to compete. So it's actually not a hard choice, Melanie. So think about it. If a boxer wants to compete at a certain weight and he's naturally 215 and he wants to get down to, and he wants to compete at a certain weight and that weight cutoff is 185, he trains, he takes whatever supplements that are legally allowed in order to fit into the category in which he wishes to perform, even if his natural biological state is to carry more weight. Y'all following me? So that is the situation where she's concerned. Is she a female according to her sex? No, she's actually intersect or a DSD individual with differing sexual development. She has XY chromosomes and she has the ability to use her testosterone. That is what made her situation different. She was not targeted because she's Black. She was not prevented from participating because she's Black. Had nothing to do with it. Okay? And I want to be clear, the actual changes in performance requirements and the guidelines didn't start in 2018 with her. They actually started in 2011. So in 2011 was the first time that they came out with these guidelines. And the first guideline said, well, you had to have 10 nanomoles per liter or less in order to compete as a female. And then that was challenged. And then they went back and redid it. Okay. Right. So Ethan says, I competed at 123 for powerlifting, even as a normal 145 man. Exactly. Diet and conditioning before a tournament. So, and I want to address a couple of things right off the bat. But before I do that, before I dive too hard, let me finish with these definitions so that we have an understanding of what we're talking about. So far, we have talked about the difference between sex and gender. Sex is your biological anatomical makeup. Okay, your physical characteristics where you have chromosomes, hormones, and internal and external genitalia and your reproductive organs, right? And even that is not just male or female, right? You can have a variation of those combinations. We now know. So let me put the intersex in perspective for you. So this one is what I want to show you now. So listen to me. The number of people born as intersex in the world is between 0.05 and 1.1% of the population. At 1.7% of the population, that is the equivalent of the number of redheads in the world. How about that? There are about the number of intersex people in the world is about equivalent to the number of redheads in the world, folks. This is not a small number. As a matter of fact, I will tell you what that number is. If it was on the lowest end possible, which is 0.05%, which most of the studies that are from 2017 and later have it at 1.7%, okay? But even at the lowest end, at 0.05% of the population, and the population is 7.9 billion people, that means there's 3,950,000 intersex people in the world. So almost 4 million. That's the same size of the city of Los Angeles. That ain't small. That's not small at all. That's a lot of people. And on the other end of that, 1.7% of 7.9 billion people. Yep, let me address that. Thank you, Phoenix. I got it. So is 134 million people. So there are approximately 134 million people in the world who are intersex. Now, I want to bring up a point that Phoenix just made. Thank you for helping. Okay. So this statement, and so I know Teresa, and no, she means no harm, but this is an educational moment for all of us. So when we talk about Caitlyn Jenner, right? She's a she. So if you dead name somebody, which means calling them by the name that they were prior to their transition, that's disrespectful, right? So we want to refer to Caitlyn Jenner as a she and her and Caitlyn and not Bruce. That is called dead naming. If someone transitions and they now have a different name, that name, you call them by their new name. You don't dead name them. Okay. Awesome. Drew's with me now. Yay. Okay. So I'm going to bring you on here in just a second. Yep. And I know you meant no disrespect at all, Teresa. And that's why I knew you wouldn't mind when Phoenix offered that piece of information. I knew that you would be open to hearing it and taking it on and not be like, oh my gosh, that hurt my feelings. No, this is how we all learn. Okay. So it's important for us to know, right, even when talking about them in the past tense. So it's always the present tense and their preferred pronouns now. So I want to keep going really quick because I want to get through this terminology so we can dive right in. Okay. And we've already touched on the castor issue, but I want to talk about Lia in just a minute too. I think, so let me ask you this. How many of you guys have learned something new already? How many of you have learned something new that you did not know prior to this broadcast? Let me know. And while you do that, I'm going to keep going. So remember, we have already covered sex and gender and the differences between those two things. We know that gender is an identity and gender is an expression, right? Whereas sex is your biological or anatomical makeup, and it is not restricted to just male or female. We also have intersex and DSD individuals, right? Yay. I love it. Look how many of you guys are saying yes, yes, yes. Yay. Okay. So we've learned about intersex individuals, right? Intersex does not have anything to do with gender identity or sexual orientation. Okay. So now let's talk about transgender. Transgender refers to an individual whose gender identity does not match their assigned birth gender. You'd never heard of dead naming? Yeah, I learned about it talking with some college students a little while back. I didn't know either, right? But now listen to this. Being transgender does not imply any specific sexual orientation. So a transgender person may additionally identify as straight, gay, lesbian, or bisexual. And get this, a trans man or trans woman may choose medical transition or non medical or social transition. Not everybody who is transgender chooses medical transition. Some of them choose social transition, which is like, cutting their hair, changing their dress, the way they carry themselves, so forth and so on. A trans man is female to male, right? The affirmed male. And that's a child or an adult who was assigned to the female gender at birth, but identifies as a male, right? A trans woman is male to female, an affirmed female. And that's a person who was assigned to the male gender at birth, but has a female gender identity. Again, that has nothing to do with their biological sex, right? It has to do with the gender that they've been assigned. And they can choose to transition with medicine or without. All right. And I want to talk about this last little bit real quick. When we talk about phobia, transphobia and homophobia, everybody reads this definition and they stop: fear or hatred of LBGTQIA people. And the fact that it manifests in a number of ways, including violence, harassment, and discrimination. I want to be clear about this. Here's my personal belief system about these words. I don't believe that these words adequately address the civil rights needs of the LGBTQIA community. And the reason why I don't feel like they do is the LGBTQIA community, in comparison to the BIPOC community, is in the infancy, really, or, kind of partially getting started, that maybe the adolescent phase of their civil rights movement compared to BIPOC individuals, right? If you think about it, the civil rights movement was over half a century ago. That is not the same. You know what I mean? It's a longer time frame. And as the civil rights movement has continued for BIPOC individuals, the terminology has changed. We now understand the difference between bias, prejudice, bigotry, and racism with regard to BIPOC individuals. We know that by the time we get to racism, we are specifically talking about using the system, right? Policies and laws to oppress or restrict those individuals, right? Transphobia and homophobia right now is just the catch-all phrase for all of that. And I think that we will see new terminology come as things continue to go, right? Because it's not just about hating people, right? I don't think you don't have to hate them. I do think it has a lot to do with fear, but you don't have to hate them to be transphobic or homophobic. It's about understanding, are you supporting the use of policy and laws to oppress them? Okay. Last bit of terminology. I'm coming to you, Phoenix, with that statement in just a second. Somebody earlier today said they didn't know what cis is. So cis is a person who identifies as the gender identity they were assigned at birth. I was assigned the female gender identity at birth, and that is how I identify. I am a cis heterosexual BIPOC individual. Okay, that would be me. Sexual orientation is a term that refers to being romantically or sexually attracted to people of a specific gender. So they're separate. Your sexual orientation and your gender identity are separate, and they are distinct parts of your overall identity. So as a child, you typically become aware of your sexual of your gender identity, but maybe not your sexual orientation, right? That may be something that comes later on. So I want to address this comment. So Phoenix says, I don't think it has to do with everyone gets offended about everything. However, I know many trans people that say they will tell their friends it's okay when internally it's not. We trans just try to cause the least amount of friction as possible because we constantly have to be aware of our space and walk too often in fear of cisgender majority. Yeah. So I tell my friends it's okay, but I do that as I look around to see if I'm in danger from others that overhear it. So you know what? I will tell you this. It's the same thing that I know that I have experienced my white friends or people that are around me. So, for example, during the protest, some of you guys are on here with me. Some of my white friends during the protest, when it was when we were out there and all that damn heat and the sun was beating down on us, I had some of y'all that came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm darker than you," or "I'm about as dark as you." And I laughed it off because I didn't really want to tell you, stop being an asshole right now, right? Like Black people, we don't want to hear that. And my whole life, I've been dark enough for Black people, and been, too light, not, y'all know what I'm saying, right? Not dark enough for Black people and too light for the other side. Y'all get that, right? So we want to so sometimes you'll see us laugh when it's not funny, give permission when we really don't want to, because we don't want to cause friction, because it's always there. Okay, so everybody's clear on the definitions, and tell me this: were the definitions helpful for you? And while you tell me that, I'm going to pull up this information about Lia. So I'm going to bring Drew up, and let me just tell y'all this. So I met Drew actually during the protest, and you were in transition at the time, and
Yep.
but I will tell you this: from the moment I met you, let me just see if I can show you. Do. You're in my, let me, okay, I don't have your number on here. Okay. But you're in my phone as Drew, and always has been from day one. Right. Um, and I've learned a lot. So like Jamie knows, she's educated me. So Jamie Ferris was with me at the protest, and Jamie's gay. And she's the first person who said to me one time, I was on a broadcast and I said something about lifestyle. And she said, it's not a lifestyle, it's a life, right? A lifestyle is, do I like to party? Do I smoke? Do I drink? Right? Who I am is not a style, it's who I am. And as soon as she said it, I was like, got it. Right? Got it. So, first of all, I want to say thank you for being willing to come on. I hit him up yesterday and was like, hey, tackling this subject tomorrow. You want to come on with me? And immediately he was like, yeah, I'm good. And so I appreciate that, because you live back home, and it's not always the
Yep.
most acceptable place to be. So do me a favor and share whatever you feel comfortable for people, and what you think people need to know, not only about the Lia Thomas discussion, but around LGBTQIA issues and trans issues, specifically.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I'm open to any kind of questions. And if it's something that I won't answer, then I'll just say I won't answer it. So I'm not offended by anything. I
Okay.
mean, and I feel like well, at least my purpose here tonight is to help people understand better and just push across the fact that, I mean, we are just like everybody else. We have those good looking cardboard boxes that we break down and keep for no reason whatsoever. And just, I mean, we're just normal people. Our journey's just a little different. So, but yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you this, because I've seen this a couple of times, and I think I've lost like 25 followers since yesterday. Which I don't care. I lost a
Mhm.
couple hundred when I started talking about racial issues again. That's okay. That means they're just not my tribe, which is cool. And we don't have to agree. But if you don't even want to learn, then you're definitely not my tribe, right? My group of people don't have to agree on everything. They do have to be open and respectful to be able to have discussions and a desire to learn. So this is the statement that I kept hearing was, that Lia Thomas she transitioned simply because she wanted to win a medal, and she couldn't beat men in the sport of swimming, so she transitioned in order to beat women in the sport of swimming. So give me your reaction to that as someone who transitioned later in life. um Give me your reaction.
There is no way, without a doubt in my mind, anywhere whatsoever, that anyone would transition for a sport. I mean, if it's anything other than for yourself, you're not going to survive it. I mean, honestly, I mean, it's that big of it's a life change. And going in, and especially in this area, it's not necessarily going to be well received. So, I mean, it's the idea that somebody would do that for sport or for a couple of years. No, no,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't think that people really understand what all is involved in that process. And my understanding, and I don't know a lot about the process, but my understanding is that there's a lot that you have to meet in terms of mental health, physical health, and a lot of other requirements before you can even begin that process. And it's not something that happens overnight.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, definitely not. And yes, you have to have the mental health checks. You have the physical health checks because I mean, hormones basically make us who we are, male, female, or somewhere in between. And you introduce that into a body that may not have had that. So yeah, you have to, because I mean, it changes everything, and it changes more than you could ever understand unless you've been through it yourself.
Yeah. So with regard to Lia Thomas, I learned a fact today that I did not know. So before she started competing at Penn in November of 2021, she had actually been on testosterone suppression for over 2.5 years. So I don't think that a lot of people know that. I think people just assume, oh, well, she just transitioned and she's playing. No, she's actually been on testosterone suppression for over 2.5 years before she started competing in the female events. Now, get this. I learned this. So a lot of people have been talking about, okay, so wait, before we do that, Almighty has a question. She says, so Drew, does insurance cover the procedures?
Nope.
No.
Mostly not. Mostly not. I only know of one major insurance company that does cover it. I mean, at least that's available in this area, but by far and large, no, they do not cover any of it. So, the financial expense
Is a lot.
on top of, yeah.
Holy geez. Um, I also want to talk about, well, I want to stay on Lia Thomas because I have so many pieces of information in my head now. I have not been this excited about a topic in a long time. And I think because I know that we are having conversations that are very challenging for a lot of people, and that can create a lot of understanding. And my hope is that people leave this broadcast with more knowledge, better understanding, maybe even some respect. And good gosh, if we could have some compassion, that would be fantastic to walk away from this thing with. So I want to point out a couple of things because people talked about Lia Thomas because she used to be male and identified as male, and that she has certain biological advantages. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is that so more body mass, muscle strength, all of those types of things. Number one, don't automatically correlate to athletic ability. I have seen individuals who are 6'6" that cannot play damn basketball, y'all. Right? So just because I have the physical attribute doesn't mean I have the skill or the talent to use it, number one. Number two, the NCAA requires trans women to have been on testosterone suppression for a year prior to competing. They also require for them to have their levels checked at the start of the season, 6 months later, and 4 weeks before championship competitions. In addition, somebody brought up hemoglobin, that men have better endurance. So for those of you all who don't know, about 3 to 4 months after you begin testosterone suppression, your hemoglobin also comes down And so hemoglobin is what allows you to get more oxygen to your muscles and allows you to have longer endurance. So for trans women, that actually decreases and goes down 3 to 4 months after they began testosterone suppression. So you got to remember, Lia had been suppressing her testosterone for 2.5 years prior to her actually competing. Yeah, no, I don't think that would be taken as disrespectful. So Teresa said, hopefully this remark isn't taken as disrespectful. She's been watching the TV show Jazz since it began a few years ago, and she's heard a lot of info that she wasn't aware of prior to that program. Yeah, that's not disrespectful at all. I think that Jazz is a show that you talk about courage and bravery. Holy geez, right? It's a lot. So Kim Armstrong says, my friend paid out of pocket for her transition, saw how difficult it was for her during the transition. She dealt with severe depression before she transitioned and was so much happier when she got approval and began her transition surgery. So, Drew, share a little bit about that for you. So, what was it like before and after in terms of like your emotional and mental well-being and your health?
Well, and of course, my particular story is a little unique because I didn't transition until later in life. Prior to that, I just identified as a lesbian. And honestly, the way I look didn't change that much, even once I started transition, because I naturally was one of the female born people who had higher testosterone. Puberty was hell for me because that was, I mean, seriously, it was when all of these hormones invaded my body that my body said, no, this is not right. This is not, and they tried to put me on birth control to regulate my hormones. And that was even worse. I mean, I felt absolutely insane. So, I mean, it was awful. I mean, I don't know how to describe it other than that. Once I came out as a lesbian and started living, I mean, that was a small part of acceptance. So things got way easier from there.
Mhm.
But, now in the midst of transition, I mean, transition itself comes with its own, or at least for me, issues because I am pre-op. I do have hormones, but I have not had any surgical intervention. And I kind of feel at this point stuck of I'm so close yet so far away.
Yeah,
So,
I can imagine. So you have the facial hair because you've had the hormone treatments and all of that. So like you have that piece of it,
mhm.
but changing anything anatomically hasn't happened yet. So it's almost like kind of being in limbo a little bit. Yeah, I can imagine that would be really rough. And so like, and I'm trying to relate because oh, I can remember being biracial and having this beauty ideal. For girls, our beauty ideal is our moms, right? And I would look in the mirror and my mom had lips like yours, not like mine. And I can remember being 8 years old, looking in the mirror, trying to make my lips like half of what they were. Now, of course, I'm like, hell no, give me all of these. But back then, there was this ideal, there was this thing that I should look like, that I didn't. And that's only like a fraction of what you're talking about. I couldn't really imagine. I know what it's like to feel like I'm not white enough or not black enough. I know what that feels like. Um, but I've never felt like my body isn't mine and that it's not what it's supposed to be. Um, and that would be extremely hard, I would think. Um, yeah, Phoenix said that's how he feels. So close, but so far away. So, Phoenix, are you in the same boat? Have you also not done the surgical intervention, but you've done the medicinal transition? So, and while you answer that, John Goddard says, I watched a coworker transition. It was a night and day difference in who she became. She was so happy and open and talkative. Some of her coworkers, unfortunately, kept dead naming her. I know at least one did it intentionally, and I would correct him every time. She eventually left to get away from the toxicity. Yeah, I've actually heard of individuals who are teachers and professors who dead name students, despite the fact that it's notated in their information and all of that. Says, and Rhett says, my birth certificate says female, but I knew at the age of 5 that's not what I was. My parents knew it too, and they supported me, so I hit the ground running and never looked back. See, that's awesome. I do want to talk about that for just a second. So in one of the documents that I'm going to give you guys the link to, this is on intersex. So when someone is intersex or DSD, right, and they have differing sexual development, we know that, like I said, that's around 134 million people in the world, folks, that we're talking about. A lot of these individuals are targeted, are discriminated against, and from a human rights perspective, a lot of them they have procedures done in order to make them fit the gender identity that is on their birth certificate. So it talks about, let me pull up this link for you guys. Rachel, I'm going to answer your question in just a second. Well, Drew, you can answer it. She's asking, what is social transition?
Social transition is where, typically they may or may not be on hormones, but they transition in terms of how they introduce themselves, what they're called at work, or, and interacting with people they don't know. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the people who do know them or their intimate lives, they don't feel any need to actually make physical changes to themselves.
Yep. So my understanding is that it's non-medical transition. So it is sharing. It's transitioning from like maybe how they dress, how they present themselves. Maybe they go to short hair. Maybe they change their name. Just changing the things on how they interact socially, but non-medical, non-medicinal transition. Is that about right? Did I get that right? I can't hear you if you're talking, Drew, but hold on. I'm trying to grab this.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay. So, and cause I'm also trying to get this daggone link. I have so many links for y'all that, I really want to, got it. Yay me. Okay. So this is the document that I was just talking about with regard to intersex individuals. Okay. Really? I do not need all of that. Facebook. Okay. So hopefully that link works. Maybe. If it doesn't, I'm going to do it like this. Okay. So think about someone who's 10, 11, 12 years old who knows that they do not identify as their gender assigned at birth, or they are intersex. They have different, great, thanks. I love that. Rachel said, thank you. I'm trying to be understanding and truly a safe zone. Love that. Yay.
Yeah.
So, but imagine your parents making this decision for you, and all of a sudden you're having medical procedures done to make you fit into something that you don't want to. And so there's a lot of talk about whether or not there's a lot of harm being done to children and young people who are intersex in order to make them conform to this societal standard or this belief that everybody is male or female, right? So Phoenix gave a great example of social transition. He said, I had hair down to my lower back and cut it off into a faux hawk. I advised my friends and my family that I was transgender and my pronouns would be he and him. And I introduced my new name I wanted to go by instead of my now dead name. Perfect. Yep, that's a great example. Oh, wow, Jamie. So Jamie said she had endometrial cancer and had a full hysterectomy. The doctor said she couldn't have HRT because it could bring my cancer back. Huh. And Rhett says, I made no physical changes and have
Wait,
always been attracted to your sir. Go ahead, Drew.
oh no, I was just going to say that's interesting about Jamie because typically you would associate estrogen as bringing back cancer, not testosterone. But I
Yeah,
mean, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but that's interesting.
right. Agreed. I do want to talk about, I want to address Leah just one more time as we're kind of getting into the rest of this information. So, for those of you all who say she shouldn't play in female sports, I want to again remind you that she had been on testosterone suppression for over 2.5 years before she competed. So that means her body had assimilated and all of her quote unquote technical advantages from a male perspective, from being able to use that testosterone, would have already been lost. So would her hemoglobin benefits, because they would have dropped as well about 3 to 4 months into that suppression therapy. So for some people to talk about, oh well, she has bigger hands, she has bigger legs, guys, that's always been present in sports. Just so we're clear, we do allow biological advantages in sports as long as we can still have meaningful competition. So I want you to think about this for just a second. So when we look at playing baseball, the way the diamonds are set up on a baseball field automatically gives left-handers an advantage, right? But we can still have meaningful competition with that advantage, so we still allow it to take place, right? When we have basketball players, we have some basketball players that are 6'6" and some that are 5'11". But throughout the team, you can still have meaningful competition. Nobody's getting blown out of the water because that one person is a certain size. So to this idea that there can't be any biological advantage in sports is just simply nonsense, right? We've always had biological advantages. Look at Mike Tyson, for instance. Y'all know his ass had an advantage as a heavyweight fighter, right? But there was still meaningful competition, sort of, right? But what you don't see is a heavyweight boxer who's allowed to fight a flyweight boxer. Why? Because you can't have meaningful competition. So in Leah's case, I think it's important for people to understand she won one race. She tied for fifth in another race, and she took eighth place in another race. And the race that she won, if she had competed in 2019 at that same time, she would have come in third. Her times are not exceptional. She's not slaughtering the entire female competition. That's simply not the case. She does not have the advantages that people think that she has. And they are not the advantages that she does have in terms of height or hands are not correlating to drastic disparities in time. It's just simply not the case. So it's important for people now. Here's the difference. Guess whose biological advantages did create her slaughtering the competition? Castor. That's what happened in 2008. She literally dominated the field and blew everybody away. Why? Because she has XY chromosomes and she can utilize the testosterone that is in her body. Even though she's naturally that way and she was assigned the female gender, she's actually an intersex individual with XY chromosomes that can utilize that testosterone. So for those of you all who are arguing about Leah's advantages, she actually doesn't have any, whereas Castor does. And Castor could have chosen to suppress in order to meet the guidelines. So, and I've already went over those on the top at the top of the hour. I want to see if there's anything else really quickly. Go ahead, Drew.
I was just going to say, if I can throw in there, what came to my mind, other than the obvious, when it turns to trans athletes, and this has nothing to do with hormones or transgender issues, but it's very widely regarded and scientifically studied that Michael Phelps, his body, I mean, he was practically unbeatable just from the way he was born. His ratio of his torso to his legs, his feet, he's double jointed in his ankles. He has half the lactic acid of other athletes. But nobody was bothered by he was just born that way. Well, guess what? We're just born this way too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Is that so when some people say like that the new NCAA rules are too ambiguous or they're too hard to follow, and you know that now it's going to vary by sport that you want to play. Well, that's because advantages are different within each sport, and you know chromosomes play a different role within each sport. So does your testosterone levels. And so here's what I would say about that. I think that these organizations, as this evolves, right, we were not having conversations about transgenders when I was in elementary school and middle school. Like it just wasn't something that we were talking about. I will tell you that sexual or sexual identity in sports has been the topic of conversation for decades, right? So if you look at in 1968, the International Olympic Committee was the first one to try to regulate like female sports. And at that time, then the reason why it came about was because some of the Russian women were like, right? And people were like, hold on, is that really a woman? Right. And so what the International Olympic Committee did in 1968, they were like, listen, we need to know you're a girl. We need to know you're a female. And so these women were forced to stand naked in front of somebody and have their bodies examined in addition to some other testing. So like, I think, so like and I've done all the reading, right, about what do I think about this? I think coming down, if we know that 99% of all women have a testosterone level that is lower than 2 nanomoles per liter, I believe it is reasonable for there to be a 5 nanomole per liter like limit. If we know that males average 7.7 to 24.9 in terms of their nanomoles per liter, again, I think that 5 is reasonable because it's close. It's like, you know, between that 7. Now, here's what a lot of people don't know. There was a study in 2019. I'm going to drop all these links in there for you guys before we wrap up. But in 2019, guys, there was a study. And did you know that 95% of all female athletes had a testosterone level that was less than 2%, and 94% of transgender women athletes, transgender female athletes also had it. So 95%, like born female, like regular male, whatever, regular female, and 94% of trans women also fell in the same category. So I don't know what your argument is, other than the fact that you're homophobic or transphobic. And I know people got mad at me when I said that yesterday, but you are. And maybe that comes from a lack of understanding. Maybe that comes from a lack of knowledge. And so that's why I wanted to do this broadcast, to be able to give some information. Great. You sent me some other links. Did you send them to me on Twitter or Facebook? And yeah, these definitions did not exist when I was young either. But guess what, Rhett? I knew who was gay. I knew who, you know what I mean? Because you just knew. Even though we didn't have these words to classify people, we knew. Okay, so let me read some of these comments real quick. I go back and forth for comfort. Some days I'm comfortable dressed as what most people consider male, and some days I dress the opposite based on how I feel that day. I'm not trans, but I've never felt wholly a woman either, so I go by she and her and they and them. I'm pretty sure it's non-binary, but I'm still learning all about all the pronouns and what they mean for people. Yeah, I wish people would be more inclusive and accepting. I can't imagine what my trans friends go through. I agree as well. Great. I'm going to put them up here as well. So among other things, I pray a discussion like this helps some in Northeast Tennessee to stop supporting elected officials who thrive on all this anti-LGBTQIA and anti-CRT legislation. Agreed. I have said this repeatedly. So Phoenix is helping out Kimberly. That's non-binary, and they have many in their community online. So Kimberly, and it may be good. So like Phoenix at the top of the broadcast put some information about where they meet. They stream online on Wednesdays, I believe he said, and he put the link in here. So maybe that would be a space where, you know, you would feel comfortable exploring kind of how you feel and don't feel and learning more about the pronouns and the terminology. I'm very grateful and so I have a cousin who is a trans man who has made that full transition. I knew him when he was a little bitty thing and long blonde hair and all of that good stuff, right? And now, you know, full beard and rocking it out. I also have Drew, who's a friend of mine that's a trans man. I have a nephew who is gay. I have, you know what I mean? I have a spectrum of friends. And here's what I have experienced within this community. I have experienced a tremendous willingness to educate me. And from a space of not being frustrated or angry with me or like literally, I have not run across anyone in this community that has said, fuck you, Danny, you use the wrong pronoun, or, you know, whatever. Like, I just haven't ran across that. And it frustrates me as a BIPOC individual to see so many people in our community be so intolerant of the LGBTQIA community. I will say, I think that part of what that stems from is they believe that the LGBTQIA community gets more favoritism in terms of like the civil rights movement because you all encompass white people, Black people, you know, Hispanic people, Latin people, whatever people. And I get that. But my whole thing is I'm not here to compare trauma. I'm not here to compare discrimination. I think that we should all be advocating for each other because they are the same battles. What has been your experience with BIPOC individuals? What do you see with that, Drew?
Well, obviously, you know where I live, so
Well, there ain't that many. Never mind. Like, I know where you live. No, that many of us there.
I will say though, and I thought about this earlier. For a brief period of time, whenever I was 18, I moved to Charlotte and lived there for about a year. And one of my favorite gay bars to go to was the Mix, which is, or was, I don't know if it even still exists, but it was very heavily, I mean, I was maybe one of two other white people in there, you know? So it was there wasn't a difference to me, but I guess we were all kind of in the same ship in one form or another. So.
Right. Yeah. I think in all of the research that I was doing today, I'll tell you all where I landed. Where I landed in terms of the greatest threat to trans, or to not trans, but the greatest threat to female athletes, collegiate and professional, the greatest threat to female athletes are not trans women. They are cis white men. And I'll tell you why I feel that way. Cis heterosexual white males predominantly run all the systems. In the NCAA, right, 60% of the head coaches for women's programs are men. 98% of the head coaches in the NCAA for men's programs are men. And 76% of Division I NCAA athletic directors, which is the highest administrative level you can get, are white men. What does that correlate to? Well, look at our WNBA versus our NBA, right? In the WNBA, the average salary for players is $130,000 a year. The minimum for WNBA players is $59,000. Come on, y'all, $59,000 to play in the WNBA. In the NBA, the average salary is $7.5 million with a minimum of $925,000, which brings me to Brittany Griner. right? I cannot
Mm-hmm.
leave this conversation without talking about her. Had she, as a queer Black woman, right? Had she been treated fairly and been paid like NBA players are, even on the minimum, she wouldn't be forced to go play in places like Russia, where she's not in the media every damn day. You all know if she was a cis heterosexual white male, her ass would be leading the news every day, every day, every day, every day. But she's not, because not only is she Black, but she is queer. And in our society, that makes her expendable. And we've learned that, right? So there's, and the one thing that I want to leave you all with, I'm going to open it up for some Q&As, but the one thing that I want to leave you all with is beginning to understand the intersectionality of your privilege and the intersectionality of discrimination. So, as a white LGBTQIA individual, you are going to have transphobia, homophobia, hatred levels, fear of discrimination. If you add to that, like Phoenix, you now add BIPOC to that, right? So now you have racial discrimination and prejudice and bigotry that gets thrown in there, and those things intersect, and so does it for privilege. You could also throw in there class, socioeconomic class, right? So I really want you all to understand that, when poor white people say I don't have privilege, well, you do. You just don't have socioeconomic privilege, but you still have racial privilege, right? When we talk about LGBTQIA individuals, there are places where these privileges and these discriminations and these oppressions intersect. And so that makes it important for us to have context to the challenges in which people face. All of these discussions, we have to put them in context to the surroundings. Y'all got it? Right. Yep, I do. So, like, and people have said to me, well, Danny, you're light skinned, so you have light skin privilege. I do. And equally to that light skin privilege, I have light skin discrimination, because there are some dark skinned people that do not care for me at all. And you can go all the way back to slavery with that, right? All the way back to it. But so these are part of the conversations that we want to have. If you have questions for either myself or Drew, I want to open it up now for you to be able to ask those before we get off here and end things. And I'm a woman, because there's a oh my gosh, there's an Asian comedian who's a woman, and she's being interviewed by Trevor Noah, I think. And she's talking about the fact that she was pregnant, right? She's been through 2 pregnancies, and a white male comedian says to her, "Oh, so you're so lucky. Your pregnancy is your shtick now, right?" And she was like, "What?" She said, "First of all, he put his sweaty hand on my belly like that was okay." She said, and then he was like, "Yeah, you're so lucky. You're a woman, and you're a minority, and you're pregnant." And she said, "Yeah, because being a minority and a woman has always been the winning combination throughout history. Are you kidding me?" And it's true, right? We don't think about those things, but it's true. So, hey, Candy, so I do have a question. So, Drew, have you experienced any workplace discrimination in your journey?
Yes.
Yes.
Previously, it was whenever I still identified as a lesbian. And honestly, now, if they didn't know, it's a whole different ball game to be a white male than a white lesbian. And I mean, it gets even worse whenever you start adding color, race. And I mean, I don't know personally, but I can only imagine. But it's ridiculous, honestly.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I think about, I remember, growing up where you now live, where I used to live until a year ago. And so from white kids, I was nigger, right? And for Black kids, I was half breed, zebra, and Oreo. Those were the 4 most common names that were used. And I mean, and as early as first and second grade, you're talking 6 and 7 years old. I've been taking this course for the last week from the National Association for the um, shit. Don't make me lie right now, but it's for the it's behavioral medicine. Anyway, a lot of really smart people. Some of the folks that are involved with that are like the guys who wrote "The Body Keeps the Score." So really, really important of individuals. But it's been like the trauma that comes from racism and how that shows up, intergenerational trauma, all of that. I think that we are years from understanding how intergenerational trauma will impact LGBTQIA individuals, because we do carry trauma in our genetics, and it does get passed down. And I wonder about the impact that, you know, that it's going to have decades from now. You know what I mean? As you know, you guys keep going. So Rachel has a personal question, and Drew doesn't have to answer. But when you became your true self, how did your family respond?
Whenever I first came out as a lesbian, I was 16 years old, and it was more or less the general consensus was, well, yeah, we already knew that. Why didn't I mean, and in all seriousness, I mean, my dad, he said, I worry about your life because I know it's going to be harder for you, but I want you to be happy. So you need to do what makes you happy. So, I mean, he was concerned, but at the same time, I mean, that's just reality. Um, Whenever I came out as trans, my father was already gone, so was my mother. So it was more extended family, and it was kind of funny because I told them, and then the next time I showed up 2 or 3 weeks later, they're like, "Okay, this is Drew. He's your cousin." But I mean, it was just,
Yeah,
didn't
and
miss a beat.
that's awesome. I literally have unfriended family members over racial issues and over LGBTQIA issues. I mean, I have an aunt that continues to post things about how homosexuality is a sin and all of these things, knowing good and well that her grandson, who's a trans man, right, is seeing this on social media. And I don't think that people really understand the impact that it has. We were having this conversation earlier. My oldest daughter and I were talking about why it is necessary. It is necessary for me to see you as a trans man, because if I see you as anything else, I am not fully, I am invalidating your experience in this world and in this life, right? Not that, it has to be a topic of conversation, right? But in order for me to love you in your totality, in order for me to empathize with you and have compassion and to see the world as you see it, that's a big piece of who you are, as it is for me to be BIPOC, right? So when people say, I don't see color, no, I'm gonna need you to see the damn color. See it. I need you to see it, because with that color comes a multitude of experiences. And if you don't see my color, you are invalidating my experience. What are your thoughts about that?
And I think part of this is because I started my transition later in life. So one of my biggest things was I'm just me. I'm the same me that I was yesterday, before. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I even made the statement to someone once. I said, if I could do this transition and no one else would notice, it's not anybody's, I wouldn't tell anybody. I mean, there are very obvious things like facial hair and the voice and everything else that happen. But I said, the way that I look at it is, unless you are looking to have some kind of intimate relation with me, then it doesn't matter what's between my legs because that's the least of anything, you
Right.
know? So
Yeah.
I'm just still me, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. You are still you. I think for me, I like to be able to see I it doesn't matter what is or isn't between your legs. I don't really care, right? What I do care about is if we're in the same space. If you and I are out to dinner and I hear some transphobic shit go down, I'm gonna be like, hey, I did it today on social media. I just was like ding 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 because the same, and this is my opinion for all my y'all see how many black and brown people did not bring their ass to this live, even though I asked them to. I'm just telling the truth. It makes me so angry. Black people get on my damn nerves, especially in this regard. And I have said this 1,000 times, right? I really do. Black people, if you want everyone else to advocate for you, if you want everyone else to see and view your experiences, you have to stop. I know, Tootie girl, but you don't really count. You like me. I'm not telling you you don't count. But yeah, black people got mad. Black people got really mad. I got called all kinds of names because um I'm calling out our community for this thing. But I believe that I should. I believe that as a cis heterosexual woman, it's my job to call out other cis heterosexual people for their homophobia and transphobia. The same way white people need to call out other white people for racism, right? Why is that important? Well, because we hear it better. This is just human nature. We hear it better from people who are like us, right? So it's
Mhm.
easier for a cis hetero person to hear from me than it is for them to hear from an LGBTQIA individual. And that's just true. Right. I know, Phoenix. That's been my experience. But and I want to bring us wrap it up real quick. If there are any more questions, throw them up here real quick. Um when it comes to this issue, what I hope to do, and all issues actually, is to continue to have sometimes difficult conversations, delicate conversations, right? But from a perspective where we can all be open with each other, where you can ask questions from a place of, and there's a difference between asking questions from a place of, I desire to learn, rather than just being nosy or wanting to shame or guilt or expose someone. You know what I mean? And you can tell the difference. Um, Kimberly said it wasn't until recently that I started speaking up and calling people out because I was afraid. I get it. Given what you shared earlier, about how you feel from one day to the next and being non-binary, I can understand that, right? So my perspective on that is, let me do it for you. I got you. There used to be, and I don't know if they still have it or not. There used to be a group on Facebook called White People Roundup. Have you heard of it, Drew? It,
No.
there's a Facebook page called White People Roundup, and it was white people dedicated to rounding up white people when it came to racial issues. So if there was a post where white people were saying stupid shit with regard to racism, you could literally tag their page and white people would flood in and just take over the conversation and give them the information and the stats and the statistics, right? No, let me tell you what racism really is. No, let me tell you what these statistics are. No, there's no such thing as black on black crime. But it's literally called White People Roundup. And it was fantastic. I utilized it about 3 or 4 years ago. You know what I mean? I used to be like, come get it. But y'all see my shirt? I wore it tonight. So this I designed this shirt, and it's a true unity shirt. So love is at the top. These are for my Indigenous Native American individuals, right? This is, of course, for our Black folk. I got the spectrums covered, right? A little bit of whole handing. And this is literally about all the major religions. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's all the symbols for like the major religions. I think that all of these things are necessary for us to have true and complete unity. Yeah. Thank you. And we're going to leave on this note. So Phoenix says, you cannot call yourself an ally if you are consistently voting the people into office that oppress us. Agree with that. Candy, It will be, I'll put it back up. I had taken it down, but it'll be on my Etsy shop. So my Etsy store is, my Etsy shop is Intrinsic Connections. That's where this t-shirt is at. That's where my Country Not Stupid t-shirt is at. That's also where I have a new t-shirt that has like a little David and Goliath, and it says, "Courage is fear that has said its prayers." It's on there. That's also where my Connect deck is at. So let me go down here. My question for Phoenix and Drew: are your longtime school friends still friends, or did they decide not to be your friends?
Um, honestly, and it has nothing to do with my gender or at that point in time my sexual orientation. I am really not connected with people that I went to high school with. And it has nothing to do with it. So no, I'm not connected, but it's not because of that. I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah, they're just not your people. They are not your people.
Yeah.
Okay, so folks, I'm going to wrap this up. Let me throw these links in here while I talk. So for those of you guys who do not know, there's an independent film studio here in Atlanta, Georgia, that wants to produce a real talk show for me, like filmed in front of a live studio audience. We're going to be doing it over 3 days, doing 2 sessions a day. One of those broadcasts is going to feature a couple of ballot health insiders who are going to be able to blow the whistle on some things that transpired. But that is not the only show that I'm doing. I'm doing a show around LGBTQIA issues. I'm doing a show around social justice and racism issues. I'm doing a show around relationships and dating. So if you would like to become a sponsor, thank you, Melanie, or make a donation to bring that to fruition, go to the website, thedannycookshow.com, and click the donate tab and help us make that happen. We've already covered the cost of the set. I do believe they were talking about actually setting it up this week. So when they do that, I'll be able to put out some pictures and some videos so you guys can see what it looks like. It's going to cost right around 15 grand to pull the whole thing off. But the purpose of the talk show is to have these conversations. Call me crazy, call me a hippie, call me whatever, but I believe that these conversations help us grow and help us understand each other better. And the more that we do that, the better the world will be. And I may not see all of the growth and connection I want to see in my lifetime. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. And it doesn't matter because my children are after me, my grandchildren are after me. One day there will be great grandchildren, right? Whether I'm alive to see them or not. And the idea is to leave the world better than when I entered it. That is the goal. That is the objective. And I will share this before we go. Somebody mentioned religion. I used to be neck deep in church, like my whole life. I used to be one of those people that said God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, right? Stupid shit. I used to be one of those individuals. And when the transgender female athlete thing came up, I had to sit with it for a minute and ask myself, why do I have some resistance to this? And when I was like, okay, so what came up for me? And I had to challenge those old belief systems, those default thought processes, that initial reaction, to ask myself, do I still believe that? Why do I believe that? Or do I need more information in order to make a better informed decision? We have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to challenge what you've been taught and what you've known all your life, if we are going to grow and be better connected to each other. Okay. Phoenix, I stupid appreciate you for popping in here tonight. I really, really do. Drew, you're dope as always. Look, Drew kept us warm. Drew brought me my first damn heater when the temperature dropped, and we was outside on them blow up mattresses outside of Holston Valley. I was cold as hell. I was like, woo woo. Drew brought me a heater. Awesome. So yay. So we got a report. So the Board of Education in Greenville met tonight And there was a great turnout of individuals who showed up wearing just solid black t-shirts in solidarity to communicate to the Board of Education that they are not happy with the racial targeting and disciplinary disparities against BIPOC children in those school systems. So yay, I'm so glad to hear that. Join us tomorrow night for the online community forum where these parents, their children, and members of the community are going to be talking about what's happening to our babies in Northeast Tennessee who are being targeted because of the color of their skin. It is important that you all show up and support them. If you go to the Rantings of Danny page under the event tab, you can RSVP, and the link to the Zoom meeting is in that event right there on Facebook for you. Drew, thank you once again. I appreciate you. Do you have any parting thoughts to leave with the people?
Where do I start? No, I mean, honestly, I'm an open book. If anybody's interested, I don't mind questions, and I think most people are. So don't be afraid to ask if you don't know, because I would rather you ask than you just go around wondering.
Yeah.
And the whole purpose is just to share experience, and no matter who anyone is, we're all doing the same thing. We're all on the planet. We're trying to make the world a little better. We're not the boogeyman. We're not different. I mean, we are different, but we're not fundamentally different.
You said boogeyman, and I have to tell you, so Jamie Ferris, who is a lesbian, was at the protest, and she came wearing her t-shirt, and it says, "Scary lesbian, boo." And I cracked up. So if you all enjoyed, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. I appreciate you very much, Drew. Let me find where I'm going here. We might do another one of these, okay? So thank you all for tuning in tonight and being a part of this conversation. I really do appreciate you. If you learned something tonight, if you found this conversation beneficial, and you believe in what I do, I'm being dead serious. If you believe in what I do, then please go over to the website, you guys, and become a sponsor or donate and help us bring this thing to life. It is happening, and I'm stupid excited about it. I cannot wait to take what we've been doing for years now on Facebook and YouTube and get it out into the mainstream, so to speak. I'm very excited about this. Not for me, because quite frankly, I'm cool right here in my ball cap doing whatever I do, right? But for all the people who can be impacted. I said this earlier today. I was talking to a friend of mine about a particular online journalism site, and I love the people at that site. However, I get frustrated because they've fallen into the derogatory, like dragging people, shaming people, and whatever. And while they are holding people accountable, they're doing it in a way that does not help us connect, that does not help us heal, that does not help us grow. And I know that I could have more followers and more money if I came at it from a hateful perspective. If I just aligned myself with an extreme side of things and called everybody out and yeah, people like that. Clickbait. I got it. I'm not that chick. I'm just simply not. I'm the chick that will hold your feet to the fucking fire and hug on you, love on you, and help you grow and learn from it. And that's who I desire to be in this life. That's the type of show that I intend to put on. And I appreciate those of you all who help bring it to life, both online right now and on the talk show that's coming. So I appreciate you all very much. Thanks, everybody. You guys be amazing. Be liked, be loved. Peace.